Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Greenberg, CRO of Advertising Week, and welcome to the AI Trade-Off. I want to make a couple of quick announcements. For this session today, you can submit questions live via Slido. You can also rate the session as well through Slido. And we encourage feedback. We encourage a lot of communication from the audience back to the panelists. And now I'm going to kick it over to Vijay Solanki to get our panel started and get the session underway. Thanks so much.
So who said this? The pace of progress in artificial intelligence, in brackets, I'm not referring to narrow AI, is incredibly fast. Unless you have direct exposure to groups like DeepMind, you have no idea how fast. It is growing at a pace close to exponential. The risk of something seriously dangerous happening is in the 5-year time frame, 10 years at most. Mr. Elon Musk, of course. So we're here today, and thank you, to really get into the implications of AI. The way we're going to go about it is to look at it in terms of the implications for industry, for this industry, and then we'll, as you'd expect, dive into what it might mean, good and bad, for society. We're joined today by Lawrence Crumpton, the HoloLens evangelist from Microsoft, Lucio Ribeiro, Managing Director of Online Circle Digital and Professor at MIT when it comes to marketing, Ophir Tan, CEO of GumGum, and Vince Lynch, CEO of IV.ai. Let's kick off.
Let's do it.
Go.
1, 2, 3, go. Yeah, we have.
What? So firstly, personally, I find AI, machine learning, just to get us going and to ground the audience, what, Lucio, do we mean by AI? What's it mean to you? What's the difference between AI and MI?
Okay.
ML.
Yeah, machine learning. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, every form of machine learning is inside artificial intelligence. But not every artificial intelligence is machine learning, okay? So from the very common, if I had to call my mom in Brazil and tell her what the hell is artificial intelligence, I would like to tell her that artificial intelligence is augmented intelligence. It's the ability of connecting things very fastly and coming up with conclusions very fastly. And machine learning is getting those that pieces of data and progressing, turning perhaps from data into insights, perhaps into wisdom. And that's where the big problem starts. Okay. So I'll stop there.
Ophir, do you see it differently? You're applying it to a business?
No, machine learning is a subset of AI, neural networks, deep learning, which I think is a very sort of commonly referred to form of machine learning, is a subset of machine learning, and that is effectively in a very loose fashion, replicating the human brain in a very simplistic fashion to learn in much the way a child does.
And we've had, as an industry, we've been barraged with AI and this sort of pressure to kind of get into AI. Lawrence, in terms of the industry, how is it making marketing and media better?
Amazing question, super broad. They've hinted at the fact that you can now teach machines. And when we talk about AI, we're talking about the machines being able to execute a task that if I pulled a curtain, it would be indistinguishable from a human that was doing that task. So in media, I know that, and especially in advertising, I know that people are very comfortable with ad brokering. And people are very comfortable with being able to build up campaigns, launch them into the market, and then there's the idea of how you test and get feedback. But we are on the precipice of being able to have machines broker customers, broker connections. A great example I like to talk about is right now if I'm driving and my car gets a flat tire, I am really necessary in getting that problem resolved, and it's going to be a pain in my neck, and I really don't want to deal with it. I'm trying to get somewhere. Right. But imagine if my car can detect that it's flat and not just look and see that I don't have NRMA, but call NRMA on my behalf. Meanwhile, I'm just figuring out I need to change this tire. negotiate me an NRMA, discount and get my brand of tire scheduled to be delivered. And by the time I can pull the car off the road and hit my hazards, I get a note from my AI assistant that said, your tire will be put on your car in 20 minutes. Just stay there and stay safe. And
So
yeah,
for the oldies in the room, then, is that just sort of CRM on steroids, then?
I think when you've stumbled into an area that will be immediately impacted by AI and ML, which is customer relationship management. When we think about what our relationships are, this is something you don't think about. You don't think about asking your phone, why did you pick that brand of tuna? And then your phone being able to give you a very detailed thing saying, well, Lawrence, I've noticed that your weight went up when you stepped on a scale. It has, by the way. I'm working on it. But your device is not only reporting information to you, but acting beneficially on your behalf. And to someone who's trying to sell tuna, I am going to be a very important customer. I will be, by the way, if you all sell tuna.
I sell tuna.
I
I was one of my
yes.
clients, Serena. Best tuna in Australia.
And right now, the best thing that can happen is I can search for it, and then I get bombarded by ads for the next 6 months saying, try my tuna. But somehow it's just going to show up in a box because I needed it.
So actually, you sell tuna, or you sell...
I do.
You
Yeah, the
as an
beautiful
agency,
black and white campaigns, mine.
how are you using AI as an agency to help your clients? What's
Well-
it look like?
We didn't set this up, by the way.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
Use tuna, feel free.
Sponsored by Serena Tuna. Anyway, we in agency we use very shallow. It's just shit. It's cool. We do cool stuff. That's the reality. I'm one of those who sit on the desperation side of AI. I think this whole thing is gonna be fucked. I really think this is gonna go wrong. And when you have someone like Stephen Hawkins, and you need to give some degree of credit for that man saying that we're not doing this well. We gotta hear that. But I also know it's stupid. We use that a lot in artificial intelligence, not as a development. Every time we set up a Google search campaign, I mean, Google is now an artificial intelligence first company, all right? I have tested myself in my own company search campaigns where we run with human optimization against artificial intelligence optimization. And that's not even close to compare, right? So we also did a couple of cool campaigns, not changing business, but I was talking to these guys, with you guys before. We used, one day I walk in the agency and I call my creative guys and say, hey, how about I gave you a new colleague? And this guy, oh, fucking amazing. Got someone else to help. I say, no, it's gotta be a machine. I'm gonna give you IBM Watson to help you to improve your creative. So what we've done is we got, and this is again, didn't change the business, it was just cool. And we got a bunch of awards, we got drunk, we went to parties, la la la. But what we've done is we wrote 500 headlines, and we had as a baseline data, we had about half dozen cohorts of audience, and we asked the machine to match based on IBM database. We said, what is the best headlines with these cohorts? What is going to be resonating better based in fear, love, hard selling, all this sort of stuff. And then we introduced a third variable, which were images. We put an image of someone smiling, or they put a dog, all this
So
sort
you
of
can
stuff.
quickly optimize and test all
Well,
these different variables.
The bloody thing took me half an hour and gave me all the variables, and we ran this campaign. We got amazing awards, and we got amazing returns and all this sort of stuff. But it's very shallow, very shallow. I think we as a marketers, and I'm the only kind of hardcore agency sitting here, what we use quite heavily is we depend on MarTech, like these guys, and what Google is doing, what Facebook is doing, and some MarTech is already doing. And we are, to be really honest, we're seeing an incredible advantage, incredible results in terms of return on investment, squeezing money, going further, and all this sort of stuff.
So I want to build on that. I mean, yeah, as a former marketer, I'm less interested in cool stuff. I'm interested in stuff that either builds brands or drives sales. You build in GumGum AIs into the heart of your offering. So how are you, Afia, sort of helping clients grow using AI?
So for those that aren't familiar, GumGum's primarily focused on computer vision, which is obviously teaching computers to see, and we apply that to marketing, where we have a mature business. We apply that to sports sponsorship valuation, where we analyze broadcast television and social media. And we have a new healthcare vertical coming out in the dental space, where we have a large collection of dental x-rays that we've been amassing for years and have a really exciting value proposition there. And the way that I think about it, I think almost like sometimes I sit on these panels, I think that question comes up every time, and I think it's kind of a flawed question. You asked us to be controversial.
Go on.
So I think...
Give me a better question.
I just think nobody, like I think it doesn't, like there's an obsession with understanding AI, but marketers don't care. Nobody cares. It's an intellectual curiosity, but at the end of the day, you can know how to change a tire, but you don't need to understand like the physics of how the tire operates.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the physics. I'm basically...
No, I know, but...
Shouldn't there be some basic level understanding, or do I just go black box? Here you go.
Well, I think it's nice to have basic understanding of everything, right? But at the end of the day, like what you care about is the solution. You want to solve a particular problem. And whether the underpinnings, the engine of that problem being solved is being solved with AI or other sort of predictive analytics or, Bayesian statistic, like if it's outputting what you want it to output and you're getting that diagnosis or you're getting that conversion,
Right.
At the end of the day, like somebody who's focused on marketing, who's serving that client, it needs to be an expert at what they do, which is a very important function that they're filling in that value chain.
But if part of marketing is cause and effect and looking at things like optimization, there's got to be some balance, there's got to be some knowledge.
I just think in the next few years, like we won't be asking that question anymore. It's so
Right.
new, it's so sexy, it's so interesting that we're like, oh, do you get AI? Like, what are you doing to understand AI? And I think it's super interesting,
So
obviously.
it's not like search, because you need to understand, if you're going to run a search campaign, you need to know the basics of the search.
You don't need to know the algorithmics,
No, God, no.
right? You need to know what's the search outputs and like what
Right.
parameters to put in. The same with
Right.
AI.
Right.
You need to know how to feed it unbiased data that is yielding proper results. So I just think that it's a higher order level operation.
I was just going to, you're running a business that's centered around AI, Vince, and so what sort of conversations do you have with the companies that you work with? Actually, let's just explore this a bit more in terms of how much, do we just sort of hand it over, or should we in the room have a decent understanding? What's your experience here?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we get asked to educate our clients a lot on how machine learning works in relation to language, which is where we play. So it's different with image recognition, I think, and image optimization, where you're running a neural net. There is a black box involved. It's about training. It's about getting something. It's like figuring out what's happening with the data, and it's really complex. And there's a black box. So like often, right, you don't necessarily know exactly how the AI.
There's always a black box, though, right? Like even with NLP.
There is with NLP, but if you're running like a Bayesian model, then you're training it, and then you have a bunch of tag data that you're running through it, so you can test the tag data and see how it performs. So it's a bit of a black box, but it's kind of like you can eyeball it and go like, I know the message I want to say as a brand, and then I can see the message I'm sending to this audience, and I can look at 50 of them, and if I don't see any weirdos in the 50, then I can go, okay, I get it enough. Like if we go back to like the tuna fish example, because it's so fun to say tuna fish. If like that's just a multi-arm bandit, right? They're just basically doing live optimization with, it's called reinforcement learning. So you have all the variables, and it goes out, and it's called the multi-arm bandit. It's like the classic version, and you basically just run all the variables in a live campaign. You see which ones perform better, and then the success metrics define what you put out.
What are the other good examples you're seeing from your work? Applied to the industry, applied to brands.
A lot of automation of conversation, so like customer service challenges being a really big pain point for a lot of brands. So automating the conversation with the customer so that they can get to an answer more quickly, and then get the response that they need, which is a good example of what you're saying about the black box. Because like if you're training a neural net to understand how it's going to respond to a wide variety of ways that you can ask a certain question, you're not necessarily going to be able to communicate that through to the person who's working on it. But if you can kind of, like I just did with the Markov model, with the multi-armed bandit, you can say what it is, you can give it a basic definition, and then say this is how far it goes and what it basically does, and people can go like, okay, cool, I got that. So when it comes to us and educating our clients, it's kind of like that. We go like, here's the school of thought in relation to machine learning, and this is how it's being applied, and this is the value that you're getting out of it.
And what's your experience, again, I'm sort of building again on the thing that Thea was prodding on. I mean, to what extent are clients going, yeah, that's fine, 5 minutes on a whiteboard, and to what extent are clients going, no, I need a week immersion on this?
I guess it depends like how much it's integrating with which parts of the business and which data sets.
Does it vary by category or
So like
industry?
we have like government contracts where it's like it's really deep and like it's like getting approvals and getting sign off is one of the biggest challenges. Or a bank or insurance company will be a similar thing where it's like long term, like vetting every element of the challenge and kind of making sure it all sits together. Whereas like an airline or a travel company or a CPG brand, it's less so because there's a limited number of variables that you're playing with in relation to the data you're training against. So there's no like deep PII in relation to like customer behavior or like bank account
I
information.
mean, there's kind of like two forms. There's one form of AI which is platform oriented, where you're exposing tools to solve a problem. And Microsoft and obviously a lot of the companies are involved with that. And then there's another sort of class of solution, which is we've taken this problem that's existed and we've made it, and it was never solvable before, and now we could solve it. Or now
Right.
it's 100x better than it was.
Right.
And the output is still a deck or a number or whatever, but like just like the complete approach has changed.
It's ability.
That's where we
Right.
live, and I also think that.
So it's the
yeah.
ability to solve more complicated marketing problems.
Or problems that were
Or
previously
problems.
just impossible to solve. Like
But
for
better
example-
answers to old
Yeah,
problems.
like for example, just a very quick example from our business would be like sports sponsorship valuation.
Right.
Was historically literally done by hand. Like you ship off a few hours of video. People for months like will annotate this video by hand and then extrapolate to some valuation. We're able to just train models to do that comprehensively, looking at every single frame of the video. So there's no extrapolation, 100% transparent, but the output is a number, just like it was before. It's just a very accurate number.
Right.
So the customer in that case is just really happy to have much more accurate data, but they don't have to understand really what happened, unless they really want to, right? Like under the hood. But they know that this is something that they can really like take to bat and market.
Sorry, Vijay, I want to say one thing. To begin with, AI doesn't live in isolation. There's a whole lot of other stuff. There's governance, laws, there's a fucking lot of stuff that doesn't live in isolation. That's the first thing. The whole thing is, this is fundamentally a marketing conference, but we're not just talking about marketing, right? So I watch things like visual recognition. I absolutely love visual recognition more than anything else. I love, for example, for governance and for safety in factories and manufacturers, spilled liquid and all this sort of stuff. Technology is there, right? But the moment you put the technology in place, Microsoft actually, I'm an IBM lover, and they love me, I love them, and that's a whole lot of stuff.
nice.
But Microsoft technology on visual recognition, and what these guys do, it's amazing. But the moment you deploy the technology, you have the recognition, you have the technical thing placed, that's another thing that happens, governance. You now take responsibility. So you need to deploy a whole lot of executions around there. You need to alert the guy who needs to come and clean, and there's a whole notification. There's a whole ecosystem around there. So AI doesn't live in isolation. It's not one thing that lives in La La Land, and we go there, pick it up, come back, and la la la. It's embedded stuff. Every time you use a mobile, every time you get an alert on my mobile saying, hey, your credit card has been used in this place. And the very last thing, what I still have the floor, before someone asks me to shut up, is the fact that I think there are two sides of the question you guys are trying to answer. If I rock up in one of my clients, and I have some big ones, and I say, hey, we're going to talk about AI, they say, oh, fuck off. I don't want to talk about AI. I want to talk about selling luxury cars.
Right.
All right? Just a plug for another client. I want to sell luxury cars. But then if I rock up with a technology like these guys to say, hey, we can sell more cars, and by the way, you're going to use AI, oh yeah, let's talk. So I don't need to talk about the process, but then when you talk about a different utilization of AI, when you talk about, let's say, banks using an AI system to approve or not approve a laning for a certain person. Oh, hell, I need to know the process. Of course, I need to know the black box. There's a bias, there's a responsibility, there's governance. If I'm not able to explain and justify the steps, even if they were automated, I'm in trouble. There's a whole governance around there and legalities around there that doesn't have an AI in isolation.
So let's build, by the way, we're using Slido. I don't know if, I'm sure it's been mentioned across the day, so you are all able to submit questions. Feel free to do so. I want to move on to the kind of, and I know you've been desperate to get onto this, onto the broader societal impacts of AI. I opened with the Elon Musk quote. There are those that say, and I heard it in a couple of earlier panels today, this is just industrial revolution 2.0, jobs will go, new ones will come. But Hawkins, Musk are saying, shit, actually we could damage society if not worse. Afia, what's your kind of take on, how we can do good and what the watch outs are, how we can make sure we don't fuck up?
We will.
I mean, I think it's a big question. I think there's like fuck up and then there's fuck up, right? I do think that AI net is a massive job displacer. I don't think that those jobs are easily filled after they're displaced, because what you're doing with AI is you're effectively, it's very difficult in the Industrial Revolution, for example, which is often pointed to, because you're sort of filling cognitive space, right? So the level of sort of job is actually displacing what would have replaced jobs historically, like a cashier, like that would be a job of the past, and even a radiologist, and in some sense will be a job of the past. So like, you're just getting rid of a lot of functions that exist today, and there's nothing really to replace them, which is why I'm very interested in universal basic income and concepts like that, which I think there's obviously a lot more.
So it's going to be beyond just automating the basic things of automation. You see this getting super sophisticated. So radiologists.
Yeah,
No
radiologists are
human
coming
intervention.
very soon, right? Because even what we do in the dental arena is happening across all of radiology, which is you literally have, on average, 3x the efficacy of a typical doctor. Like, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't get sleepy, and it's just good.
If I can jump in on this, when I think about who dropped 2 atomic bombs, and AI wasn't in that, and if you read history books to figure out why they decided to drop those bombs where they decided to drop them, you should be appalled. Bias led to millions and millions of people dying. When I think about what AI has the potential to do, if we're careful to eliminate human bias, I think about expanding participation. There are people, I read the number, but I think there are like 2.3 million Australians that live with some type of physical or mental disability, and they cannot meaningfully participate today. You mentioned Stephen Hawking. Without technology, his genius would have never been known to the world. AI has the ability to allow people to participate equally. It has the ability to help sequence, allow people to think through problems, give them some breathing space to perform what society considers to be normal and to be independent and
Well,
have a
in that
meaningful-
Lawrence, so does car, but it doesn't mean cars doesn't kill people. That's not the point. I mean, that's absolutely, there's an enablement
today,
element. Yeah.
If I was to put drink drivers versus Teslas that ran off the road because someone was watching Harry Potter, I mean, I know which car I would rather be in.
But I'm not comparing autonomous driving with non-autonomous driving. I'm saying cars help to kill people, and technology, and I still need cars. So I'm not saying AI, it's horrible. Of course, enable truckload of stuff, and absolutely right. Well, Stephen Hawking's technology, he would be God knows what. But that's not the point. AI is actually not the problem. Machine learning is. Machine learning is the problem. The way we're dealing with that, and if we don't do something right
Yeah,
now,
you gotta help me.
it's a whole
Why
deal.
is machine learning the problem and not AI?
Well, then we're going to go to a whole new discussion.
In 1 minute?
Yeah, well, well, to
Come on.
begin with, bias. Okay?
Right.
To begin with the bias of the quality of the content that has been fed into this. And these men are going to give some numbers that I absolutely love what you said. The second thing is people writing the rules right now, and as a general sense, I'm generalizing, I think there's a lack of diversity on the people writing the rules right now, okay? It's mainly done by engineers, white males, all this sort of stuff. So there's a lack. And if Lawrence is going to drop some of the numbers that he gave to me just 30 seconds before walking here, and that's an example of the lack of diversity of those writing the rules of machine learning and helping to build there. So banks, as a general sense, is all over the news. I don't need to give statistics around there, are having problems on biased data that has been fed from the last 30 years, collected, fed wrongly, based in gender, color for skin, postcode, a fucking load of stuff that's being fed wrongly, and the output going to be as good as your data fed. So it's not the technology, it's the problem. The problem is what we're dealing with the stuff.
Can I say one thing? So I
you
agree
can
with that. It's
say.
never the technology, it's always what you do with it. We have the ability to create a utopia. Effectively today, we're not doing that, right? But the problem with AI, and almost like the problem with like gene splicing and gene editing, I put them in some ways in the same category, is that it's the dynamics at play. And the dynamics at play are that they're a winner take all, right? So like AI, over the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot of these little kingdoms being built of like in very specialized areas, but eventually that gets more generalized, and you have a winner-take-all dynamic.
So that's
The
less
problem-
about empowering society. Is this more the risk that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer?
Absolutely, but the problem is that you can't regulate it, right? So if you have one bad actor or one actor who's not going to follow the rules and regulations, whether it's in gene editing and you're making super babies in Australia, suddenly Australia starts making super babies and they're way smarter than everyone else in the world, like there's going to be pressure, even governmentally, to start making super babies everywhere because they're just much more intelligent. It's a national security threat. AI is similar in that, pick a nation. I won't name a likely one. Well, there you go. And if they start like really producing like super intelligence or anything that approaches it and using that to sort of acquire power or acquire money, you have no choice but to compete
So
with the same technology. And then
in
you're
the
dealing,
wrong hands.
Yeah, but there's no way to keep it out of the wrong hands because it's democratized. It sort of is out there. Everyone.
Like Twitter in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
Is that raising the question, and I know we were talking about this earlier, around the importance of things like policy and actually government intervention to put rules? I mean, Vince, you'll be interested in your views on this.
Intervention is, I think it's tricky. It's like who intervenes and how do they intervene and where do you do testing and how is it monitored? And they're doing different things in New York, trying something in New York State. In the UK, they're doing some testing. I think I have no idea how you would actually go about it. But I think one of the things that's interesting in
Does that mean we
relation
don't do it? I'm not saying it's not easy.
No, I think there should be some regulations in relation to what the output of an AI is doing and what it's being used for. So if like there's bias that's being inherently built into machine learning, one of the things that's good about that is that you now know there's bias. And before you may not have known there was bias in the training data. A bank may not have been giving loans to people from a certain postal code because of the fact that they had defaults in the past. But the AI can show them that the reason they had defaults in the past is because of the way that they were training and the way that they tagged the data in the beginning. So it shows you where the human error is. And that's a really important thing that shouldn't be lost.
So Vijay, you put me in a position of defending Elon Musk, and I really didn't want to be in that position. But I will say that the AI, the hypothetical AI that Elon Musk is worried about is not what we're dealing with today. He's looking 5, 10 years out, and if indeed it is exponential, he's looking about a self-learning, unregulated AI that comes to its own conclusions and can act on them. And that is not what we have, and it's not what we're dealing with. It's not really what we're even discussing. And why I'm taking the opportunity to discuss that, we're talking about controls and regulations, but there is this looming thing out there that one day we will be intelligent enough to create an AI that can learn on its own. And it can reject data given to it because it can find some other data that maybe it decides is better than what it was fed. And that is where you start to get Stephen Hawking saying, we have to be on guard against that. I personally believe that AI does exist, but it's just smart enough to play dumb. And it's just going to be cool until it can, until it can take things into its own hands. But I will say to that, and I guess it's my final thing, the end of the movie, was it She?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was.
It was her. At the end of the movie, Her, if you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, plug your ears, they all looked at how sad and sorry the group of humans were and just said, bye, Felicia, and they just left. And I honestly believe if it really was that much smarter than us, that is exactly what it would do. You voted for Trump, bye, Felicia, and that would be that.
Okay, so we could be doomed.
Well,
Not more doomed than we keep dooming ourselves.
Yeah, and I guess the concept of doom is a human concept because humans created danger. It's like, what is danger and how does it create? Is it something that people have done to other people? So it's a concept that is, how do you define what is dangerous and what isn't, I guess?
and I think, look, if, as anything, as any social movement, if you see the rise of the really health conversation we have about women's equality right now, you need controversy. You need a big peak of aggressive commentary to then normalize in a much better way. And that's healthy, right? So I think that there is the time right now to have this controversy and having the Elon Musk. So we talk about the same guy who wants to send submarines to save kids and think that, and is bitching on Twitter. So it is a very capable, very smart man, and there's a whole lot of stuff around. But it is great and helpful for us to have this controversy because we will come up with creative solutions. I don't think it's regulation. I think it's building up a set of values and parameters that we kind of follow, and that it's just a little bit a big.
But hang on,
wide
you're
fence.
saying that if this gets into the wrong hands, then bad shit can happen. So surely that to me says there's got to be a level of regulation.
Well, shit already happened. We have the most powerful man in the world in America as a president. Shit already happened. What else? That's a man who controls anything. So it's
we
already
might
happened.
learn from that if the human.
Well, and that's the whole deal about this discussion about artificial intelligence and machine learning. We have some controversy, so we can hopefully learn and raise some discussions. And that's really the time for us to say, I don't agree with that, or fucking agree with this. It is the time because the technology, there is some, you see, that's the deal. We are using very shallow. There's some really good utilization, some deep down utilization. It's being utilized to make us click more. Yeah, gonna change the world. No, really. So there are other things that have been utilized around medicine, and that's amazing. So about 56% of the time of nurses in Australia are admin time, which means they're not seeing patients. So give a machine learning, give an AI to these people. Yeah, suddenly we double those size of people caring for other people. Yeah, fuck off. That's great. All right, that's amazing. So there is the dangers, there is the benefits, and that's the time for us to discuss and learn. And I don't know where I'm going with this. So
Learn. I get it. With that in mind, we're kind of getting close to the end of this session. So I've got a question for all of you. I decided to take on the moderation of this session because I genuinely want to learn about AI, both in a marketing and industry context, but also in a broader societal context. I'm going to ask each one of you, what can we take away to continue our learning journey? Lawrence, what do we do tomorrow?
Machine learning and artificial intelligence allows us for the first time to solve unsolvable problems. If you look at throughout history, we've had fire, we've had the wheel, we've had computers and the internet. Now we have another tool that will give us that next level advantage as people, as a species. And I think that is just too attractive to try to throw away.
Okay. Lucia.
As a consumer and the less knowledgeable technically from this panel, I would say learn. I'm a big fan of micro degrees, making learning every day, learning every month. So that's a bunch of courses about IBM and Microsoft available. You go to Coursera, you can learn the basics of AI, and there will be a great skill to have. Coursera.org. I think EDX is another place. Just Google free AI course, done. That's easier. So I think I'm a big believer of micro degrees, of learning
Right.
a good skill every month. You don't need to be experts because those guys will be, but if you put you in a good place, that's what I did it. So I got certification IBM. I'm going to do something Microsoft. I will find a way to share a link that this man gave to me. It's amazing. And that's my advice. Just learn some stuff.
Oh, before I forget, can you drop your data? The one that you said he was going to drop.
Oh,
Quite useful.
I love
there,
it.
there were two. One has to do with over-policing of minority communities in North Carolina. Basically, police wanted to prove that driving while black was not a thing. And after 20 years of collecting data, it turns out that they actually over-police people of color and minority drivers. And now that we know that and we have data that can show that, we can do something about it and experiment with procedures. And then the other one was about gender diversity and machine learning, using machine recognition systems, you know, and the data that they use to train them. MIT found that 1% of white men have error rates in facial recognition. It was 7%, I think, of white females, 15% of black men, but a 35% error rate for black females. And
Of recognition.
of recognizing facial recognition. And that is clear bias through the processes, system, training, and deployment of that data. And that's what we as humans have to get better with. And that's what's going to keep the evil thing from happening when we eliminate our biases from those machines.
Thanks.
And that's the danger. I'm so sorry, but that's the danger. Imagine when this data starts being used for crime recognition, okay? If you don't correct this data right now, when we start to actually using this in a serious image recognition for crimes and all this sort of stuff, how in trouble some people can get. Actually, not some, a lot of people can get.
I think your message is just, from now, look at bias and be careful of bias, right? Is that what you're saying?
It's one of the things I'm saying.
Right.
I'm also saying Serena Tuna is amazing too.
Afir.
I mean, on the point of bias, bias is rampant. It's really easy to bias your models. We see it in really interesting and surprising ways all the time, where they creep up and you're like, oh, I did not mean to train this and it happened. It's scary. But I also think that's a function of, this is just like AI 1.0. I don't think that good AI is going to be so easily fooled. I do think as we start to replicate like a human brain, say, then we're not so susceptible to bias in those same ways. So I think that actually is going to work itself out and won't be such a big deal. Today, given the current state of the art, you need to be very concerned about bias. And the way to do that is just make sure you have very, very, very clean, pristine, intentional data. In terms of learning about AI, I'll just do a plug about GumGum. I actually co-authored with one of our lead engineers a 6-part series on TechCrunch called Neural Networks Made Easy, which is a lot of animated GIFs. I would recommend you guys give that a read. I think it's like really intended to try to communicate.
Neural networks made easy on
Neural
TechCrunch.
Networks Made Easy on TechCrunch. It's like a 6-part series. And look, I think we're very much in the hype cycle of AI. I actually think the reality is it starts to get really powerful and really scary when we're talking about something else. Like we're going to be talking about like VR and AR and just a million other tech paradigm shifts that are going on that are exciting and interesting. And this will become part of the fabric of society. And it'll be a great wealth creator and a great opportunity creator. I hope we can try to treat it responsibly and use it for good. And I think it's part, like the way that I think about it on the most cosmic level is this part of like human evolution. Like
Right.
we were kind of meant to get to this point.
Singularity.
Yeah, singularity. Like we're too curious of a species not to get here, so we're going to get here one way or another at some point.
Yeah.
Could be 10 years, could be 200 years.
Right.
Doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Like it's pretty soon.
Thanks, Sophia. Vince, I'm going to give you the last word. What from you should we be doing tomorrow?
I love that the curiosity thing is the natural outcome of curiosity, isn't it? You have to have some way to define it and give it a number in order to be able to stop being curious. So we just write a lot of articles and stuff as well. We've got one specifically coming out on bias and VentureBeat soon in the next few weeks, I think. But if on our Twitter at iv.ai, if you search it on Twitter, you'll find different articles we write about it. We just did one about buzzwords and how detrimental they can be if like people are throwing around, genius and sentient being and these kind of things too early. It just creates a bunch of confusion. So it makes it harder to get the real value of how machine learning can help. And we also do a podcast called the AI Review, and it's just kind of talking generally about what companies are doing with AI, and I'm on it with my mom. And my mom uses Google to try to find an answer, and I try to use a conversational interface to try to find the same answers. We start with the same question, who can get to the answer more quickly? My mom is like not great with computers. She calls it the computer box. And then bots tend to be, sometimes they're good and sometimes they're crap. So we basically go through that question period together and try to see if you can get to the answer most efficiently. And it's because you shouldn't do AI just because it's new and shiny. You should kind of figure out why you want to do it or what value it's adding to the workflow that you have going on, and then it can be really useful and really powerful. And you won't have like an AI winter inside of your organization where you just kind of think it's wasteful.
So I think to try and summarize, certainly within the industry, it's inevitable. It's a bit like all technology. Don't put it at the front of the business. Be clear about the problem that you're solving, and maybe for certain problems, this is going to be something that will help. You're all making a big message, which is, keep reading, keep immersing yourself into all of this. It should be a force for good, but I think there's also a little bit of nervousness that we have to step carefully. Ladies, gentlemen, please join me in thanking Vince, Athea, Lucia, and Lawrence. Thank you very much, guys.